The Gallup State of the Global Workplace 2026 report dropped this month, and it contains a finding that I have not seen anyone address directly yet. Leaders report more stress, more anger, more sadness, and more loneliness on a daily basis than the people they lead. Leaders are less likely than individual contributors to say they smiled or laughed a lot the day before, and they are less likely to experience enjoyment on a typical workday than the managers below them. Higher status at work does not translate into better days. In fact, according to the most current data available, leaders carry the heaviest emotional burden of anyone in the organization, while simultaneously being the least likely to acknowledge it, seek support for it, or receive it. This video is about what Gallup is calling the leadership emotional burden, and why the most dangerous version of it is the one that the leader themselves cannot see. Here is the specific pattern the 2026 data reveals. Leaders score higher than everyone else on engagement. They are the most committed, the most invested, the most identified with their work. And they score higher than everyone else on stress, anger, sadness, and loneliness simultaneously. Those two things are not in conflict. They are directly connected. The deeper your investment in your work and your people, the more you feel when the work is hard, the decisions are painful, and the weight is yours to carry. This is not a weakness. It is the predictable emotional cost of genuine leadership. The problem is not that leaders feel these things. The problem is that the same qualities that make them effective, the commitment, the responsibility, and the sense that the outcomes are personal, also make them the people in the building least likely to ask for support with what they are carrying. There is a term in the research I want to introduce you to, emotional tax, not to be confused with emotional intelligence, which is the capacity to understand and manage emotion. Emotional tax is the ongoing cost of sustained emotional labor in a leadership role, the continuous expenditure of emotional energy required to manage your own internal state while simultaneously managing the emotional climate of the people around you. In leadership, emotional tax has three specific components. The first is what researchers call surface acting. This is the effort of displaying emotions you do not feel or suppressing emotions you do feel to meet the emotional expectations of your role. Staying calm in a meeting when you are genuinely angry. Projecting confidence when you are genuinely uncertain. Expressing enthusiasm for a direction you have private reservations about. Surface acting is the most cognitively and physiologically expensive form of emotional labor because it requires simultaneously managing your internal experience and performing a different external one. Research consistently shows that sustained surface acting predicts burnout faster than almost any other single variable. The second component is what I call accumulated grief. This is the emotional weight of the losses that leadership requires, the good people you could not protect from layoffs, the decisions that hurt people who did not deserve to be hurt, the relationships that ended because of choices you had to make, the version of yourself you had to set aside to do the job. Leaders rarely have language for this or space to process it. It accumulates quietly, adding its weight to every subsequent decision. The third is responsibility isolation. Gallup's data shows that leaders report higher levels of loneliness than individual contributors, which seems counterintuitive given that leaders are rarely physically alone. The loneliness of leadership is not social. It is the specific experience of carrying responsibility that cannot be fully shared. Decisions that affect people's lives and livelihoods, the knowledge that your uncertainty, if expressed fully, might destabilize the people who need your steadiness. That particular aloneness does not have an easy structural solution, but it has a clinical one. Before we continue, go to restleader.com and take the free stress assessment right now. The emotional burden patterns I am describing have specific signatures in the assessment, and knowing yours is the difference between generic stress management and targeted intervention. Restleader.com. The link is in the description. The REST framework addresses emotional tax directly at the explore and support stages. And here is what that looks like specifically. The explore stage for emotional tax means doing something most leaders have never done. Taking an honest inventory of the emotional expenditures your role requires, not the feelings you have, but the emotional work you are doing. How much surface acting do you engage in daily? What losses are sitting unprocessed in the background of your leadership? What weight are you carrying in isolation that could be distributed without undermining your authority or your team's stability? Most leaders have never answered these questions, not because they lack self-awareness, but because the culture they operate in has never created a safe or structured space to examine them. This exercise is part of what the REST framework is designed to do. The support stage is where the work of emotional tax specifically is addressed. The emotional labor of leadership is real clinical work. It is not soft. It is not peripheral. It is as demanding as any cognitive task your role requires, and it deserves the same quality of professional support. Not because you are fragile, because you are doing something genuinely challenging, and the research is unambiguous that leaders who have structured support for their emotional processing perform better, make better decisions, have lower burnout rates, and lead teams that are measurably more engaged. That is not a wellness argument. That is an organizational performance argument. 3 specific practices that reduce emotional tax based on current research. The first is what I call expressive processing, a brief daily practice of naming in precise language what you actually felt and what it cost you during the day. This is not journaling in the conventional sense. A specific inventory. What surface acting did I do today and what did it cost? What loss am I carrying that I have not acknowledged? What am I holding in isolation that I could speak out loud in a safe context? This practice, done consistently, prevents the accumulation that becomes a clinical burden. The second is deliberate role separation. Leaders who maintain a clear cognitive distinction between their professional role and their personal identity have consistently lower emotional tax across the research. This is not about work-life balance in the conventional sense. It is about the specific practice of regularly stepping out of the leadership role, actively releasing the emotional responsibility of the role for periods of genuine psychological off time. Your nervous system needs to experience you as a person, not just as a leader, to regulate effectively. The third is what the research calls selective vulnerability, the intentional sharing of genuine uncertainty or difficulty with a trusted peer, colleague, or professional in a way that is appropriate to the context. Not performing emotions, not unburdening inappropriately, the specific chosen disclosure of something real with someone who can hold it. The research on this topic is consistent. Leaders who practice selective vulnerability have lower cortisol levels, lower burnout rates, and higher team trust scores than those who do not. I want to return to the Gallup finding one more time before we close because I think it deserves to be fully understood. Leaders report more stress, more anger, more sadness, and more loneliness than anyone else in the building, and they show up anyway, every day. This is for their teams, their organizations, and their work. That combination of carrying weight and showing up anyway is not something to push through indefinitely. It is something to attend to with the same quality of care and clinical precision that high-level leadership deserves. You became a leader because you are able to handle responsibility. The question is not whether you can carry it, you can. The question is whether you will attend to what carrying it is costing you before the cost becomes a crisis. Go to restleader.com, take the assessment. If this video names something you've been carrying without permission to put down, share it with the leader in your life who needs to hear that what they feel is not weakness. It is the honest cost of doing the work with their whole selves. Restleader.com. Link is in the description.